Our next organ, plant organ that we're going to study are the stems. And stems are very important because they are the part of the plant that connects the roots to the leaves. And it is the stem that actually makes the leaves, it displays the leaves, and it supports them. And why is it displaying them and spreading them out? So that the sunlight can get to those leaves and that capture that sun and then carry out photosynthesis and make food, because it's actually the leaf that is the primary food. That's what it is. That's the organ primarily responsible for making glucose, the food. Although if a stem is green, some photosynthesis can go on in that as well. So it supports branches and leaves, and their vascular tissue is going to transport water and minerals up and down the two kinds of sap. And plants' stems are classified as either herbaceous or woody, and we're going to talk about both of those. So the types of stems: herbaceous, woody. Herbaceous does not just mean on an herb. It means that they're soft, they're more flexible. Think of a tulip. Think about most of your flowers that you're seeing right now out. They have a soft, flexible stem. Yet, some of them can get quite large. If you've ever seen a sunflower plant, that can be taller than a person. Yet, it's got a herbaceous stem, doesn't have wood. So what enables it to be supported, to stand stiff, to stand upright, to actually do its job of displaying those leaves? It is the turgor pressure with the cell walls. It's got the cellulose in it, and actually it even has some stronger materials in some of those bigger plants. And so what happens, the turgor pressure, what it is, it's water pressure inside the cell's central vacuole. We've studied about the vacuoles. So as that water fills up in the central vacuole, it's going to exert pressure against the cell wall, which is rigid and stiff. And that's what keeps it stiff or keeps it displaying and supporting the leaves like it should. If it doesn't get enough water and the central vacuole does not fill up, that's what happens with wilting, and that's why a plant starts to wilt. And if the wilting has, if you've damaged those cells where they can't fill back up in the central vacuole, that's called permanent wilting. It means it'll lead to death of the plant. If it's where it's just temporarily, you can add water and then it perks right and gets stiff up again, that is because it was just, it wasn't permanent, it was temporary. Now, woody plants, I wouldn't say most, but a lot of them begin as herbaceous stems, and then over the years they will change from herbaceous to woody. And you can look at it, any sapling of the trees, the oak trees and so forth. They are herbaceous stems. And then look at a full-grown oak tree and see the wood that is there. Now, woody stems, as you can see, they're hard, they're not very flexible. Because they are wood, they are capable of supporting a lot more weight than a herbaceous stem. And that's why some of the giant trees like the redwoods, which can get up to be 365 feet tall, that's why, because they have the wood. So trees and shrubs are examples of woody stems. Stem function, as I mentioned, make sure you can list these and know these for the quiz. The stems manufacture the leaves, they're going to support those leaves, and they're going to display those leaves so that they can get the sunlight. Conducting materials means that they have the sap, that the xylem is carrying the sap up, phloem is carrying the sap down. Another thing that you need to know for lab, you're not going to have a diagram or anything on this, is how to recognize a monocot stem and a dicot stem under the microscope. And the way to do that is looking for the fibrovascular bundles. When you look at a monocot stem, look in that upper left-hand picture there. All the fibrovascular bundles are scattered. As you can see there, they're all over the place. They're scattered everywhere. And then on the right, you can see one up close where they actually have the parts showing you where the xylem is, where the phloem is, and the sieve plate, tubes, and the companion cells. To me, now if you turn that picture upside down over there, you would see more, it reminds me of a monkey face. That's what it does, with two eyes and the nose and the mouth. The airspace would be the mouth. So I not only think of the fibrovascular bundles being scattered, to me they also resemble a monkey face. Whereas with the dicot stems, the fibrovascular bundles, as you can see, are all around the edge. They're under the epidermis. And they're not scattered. And to me, they look like Santa Clauses. You can see the little Santa Claus hat, and then the white, and then the beard. So those are the fibrovascular bundles. And again, on the right, in the lower picture, it's showing you where the xylem and where the phloem is in those fibrovascular bundles. So that's a dicot stem. And remember, the monocot is corn, the dicot example is a lima bean. Now let's talk a little bit about wood, what wood is. If you've ever seen the inside of a tree, it's basically wood. That's what we call it. And wood is xylem that has built up over several years. So the first xylem that was ever made is going to be dead in the center. And you can see it's real dark color in that picture. So the oldest xylem is in the very center of a tree. And then what happens each year, there is a new layer of xylem built just under the bark. And that takes place over years, over years, over years. And that's what makes, we're going to talk about the growth rings that you're familiar with. The kinds of wood, you do need to know the difference between heartwood and sapwood. Heartwood is in the middle of the tree. It's the xylem that is dead. It's usually darker in color. Sapwood is the new. It's what's just under the bark. It's the one that is the xylem that is alive and functioning. That's why it's called sapwood, because the sap is moving up and down through the xylem and the phloem. Here's an example. Look at the real example there on the right. See that dark, all that dark color? That is heartwood. It's dead. It's non-functioning. It's in the center of the tree. And then look at the ring around it. That's kind of a beige color. That's the living xylem. The xylem that is conducting the sap. And that's why it's called sapwood. And it was interesting about, well, I think I'll tell you when I show you the picture of the tree. All right, kinds of wood. You don't, yes, you do need to know about springwood and summerwood. It's pretty easy. Springwood is when the xylem builds up or develops during the first part of the growing season, the early part. Remember, spring comes before summer. So spring would be the first part of the growing. Summerwood is xylem that is going to develop later in the growing season. So spring first, summer second. And it is those two that make up what we call an annual growth ring. And you can see the white dot and the green dot. Those two dots, those two layers, the springwood and the sapwood, make one growth ring. And of course you can estimate the age of the tree by counting growth rings. Now, a springwood and summerwood is 1 year. It's not precise because there might be a year where there's a drought and it really doesn't make an annual ring, or it might be a real good year where it produces more. But it's, you know, it's going to be close to the age of the tree. Now, here's what you don't need to know is the hardwood and the sapwood. Comes primarily from angiosperms, hardwood does, and that kind of wood is more expensive. Oak, if you get furniture made out of oak or maple or walnut, you're going to pay a lot more for that furniture. And softwood comes from the gymnosperms, which are the cone bearers, the ferns, the pines, the cedars, and the spruce. And it is called softwood because it is a lot softer. It will take more nicks and dings and, and get damaged more easily. That's why they don't make floors called softwood floors. They make floors that are hardwood. And here's a hardwood and softwood picture. Here's a picture showing you the heartwood and the sapwood. And look at that green layer. We're going to talk about the cambiums. Here's another good picture showing you all various parts, the cambiums, the cortex, cork, and all that. We're not going to learn all of those structures. Bark. Bark, as you know, is on the outside of the tree. It's the rough exterior. It's dead. It's what we see. And it is the part, or part of it, actually makes the new xylem and phloem, not the dead part that we see on the outside. So bark is made up of more than one part as well. The one part of bark, the part that we see, the exterior, is technically called cork. Now, it's not the cork that you make bulletin boards out of. That's a different tree. But it's called cork, which is kind of weird to me. But it is. So that cork, you need to know cork is the outer layer of bark. And of course, God put it there to protect the plant. And you damage the plant. When you take the bark off, it's just like if you got a burn or something where your skin then was taken off and you've exposed it, that you've lost your first defense of that barrier. Well, that's true with a plant as well. If you strip some of the bark off, you've now exposed the inner side where bugs and moisture and other things can get in, and diseases, and destroy the tree. Cork forms a tough waterproof coating that is also protecting. It's keeping harmful organisms out. It's also keeping a lot of extra moisture out so it doesn't rot. Cork cambium and also vascular cambium is the living part of the bark. It's a very thin layer. You see green. It's like in a stem. If you try to break a stem and it snaps real easily and you don't see any green, that's a dead stem. But if you try to break it and it just bends and bends, then you see that green layer in there. That's the living part. That is what is making the new cork cells, the new xylem and the phloem.